Welcome back to As Told by You. We've got a great guest today, Daniel Andrews, and he's one of the guys that I have probably known in this town as long as anybody. And I can actually introduce him, which is so exciting. If anyone has ever been to a networking event ever, you've seen Daniel Andrews. And he is iconic in his suits. So are you the director of Network in Action? I guess we can talk about that a little bit. But
sure.
You know, he works with Network in Action.
Right. I hold a franchise for Network in Action. I'm not the franchisor. It's based out of Houston, Texas. But it's a business growth community. We meet monthly here in Columbia at a restaurant, Publica, which I'm sure you're a fan of, as am I, the Bull Street District. For those of you who are local, big fan of Mike and the food over there. So go visit Publica. And about 2.5 years ago, Home Office gave us the green light to create a digital group, i.e. a group that meets via Zoom once a month if we wanted to. And I did with an entirely different group of people. If you're Zoom, you're not geographically constrained. If you're not geographically constrained, you're not constrained by the local marketplace. So I created a digital group that we get together once a month to great effect. And I chose to focus on strictly business-to-business salespeople.
Cool.
That can deliver, at a broader reach. But yeah, been coming up on my 10-year anniversary with Network in Action next year. Just October will be 9 years. So one more year and it'll be 10. And
so that's how we met, because when you first moved to Columbia, I was at SoCo.
Right.
And you had a sit-down meeting with every single person at SoCo.
I tried to. I certainly did.
So it was like, today's my meeting with Daniel, because everybody's had one.
Getting to know everybody at SoCo. SoCo, for those of you that aren't local, co-working space.
Yeah.
And we're both big fans, Bill and I, of Greg Hilton, of course, that runs that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And SoCo is foundational in my growth as a business person, to get out of the house, to get my business out of the house and get it away from home distractions and two different distractions, but better distractions. Still, I guess.
Right.
So tell me what led you to running a networking group. How did you get to that?
Sure. And you'll notice, by the way, that I don't use the word networking group.
Okay.
And I'll explain a little bit about why. But how I got here, I'm from Columbia. I ran a business here in Columbia from 90 to 2003. Moved to St. Louis for 10 years, Houston, Texas for 3 years, moved home in 2016 with the Network in Action brand name. But in my first marriage, my first wife used to say to me, if you could figure out a way to make a living with all the handshakes you've created between other people. Mm-hmm. And I said, I get it. I said, the only model I know is charging some sort of finder's fee, and I object to that on philosophical and ethical grounds. I find out, by the way, it's also not effective, so there's practical reasons to reject a finder's fee approach to business. I said, I just don't know a model around that. And ironically, after my divorce in Houston, Texas, I discovered a way to bring people together and get paid for doing that consistently. And so I was a client at Network in Action, a member of Network in Action in Houston. And when I went to move home back to South Carolina, I sat down with the founder, because the meeting was once a month. I said, I don't want you to think I ghosted you, right? I'm about to move. I won't be here. I can't come back. It's 800 miles. And so I'm moving, I'm leaving, I'm resigning. And he said, oh, yeah, no problem. He said, I understand. I said, yeah, I'm a big fan of the brand name. I wouldn't just, walk out the door. And he said, well, if you're a big fan of the brand name, and he said, and you've done this better than anybody I've ever seen, would you want to consider planting the flag for us in South Carolina? So we negotiated a franchise agreement then, and I did that right at 9 years ago. But the idea, going back to the notion of the handshakes I've created between other people, is it always made sense to me that the guy selling billboards should hang out with the guy selling radio ads, and that the graphic artist and the web designer and the divorce attorney and the moving company, right, and the real estate agent and the mortgage lender, right, those people should always be spending time with other people in those specific industries.
Synergy.
They should focus their relationship energy on the people that can help them the most, right? Anybody, and you've probably seen this, Brian, there's people in the world whose client base is almost identically overlaps yours.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter what you do, somebody else is selling something to the same people. Now, real estate and mortgage is number one, a real common example, because we all understand that process, and you need a real estate agent and a mortgage lender usually at the exact same moment in time. right? A few mortgage loans are made without a real estate transaction. There's
And
such
home
a thing as a
inspector
refi.
and
Right.
Roofer and those guys.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's true that if somebody's in billboard advertising, those clients might not need radio advertising at the same time. But somebody that's indicated willingness to spend money on advertising is somebody who's willing to spend money on advertising.
Right.
And if you have a abundance mindset, not a scarcity mindset, and you're in radio sales, your billboard guy is your best source of leads.
And you're just reallocating the budget a little bit.
Correct. And if they can understand that, he may shave his billboard budget by a few billboards to pay for his radio ads, or vice versa, but that means they're getting long-term results, that those two reinforce each other, that if I hear it on the radio and see it on the billboard, I'm more likely to get results, which means I'm more likely to stay as a client, that ultimately it's a win for both of them. And I've always understood that. And the number of people that in those industries that don't understand where their target market should come from just blew me away.
So what does talk about what network in action does, and what is the model for that?
Sure. Well, the model is that number one, we believe that introductions are earned, not given. Right? We don't use metrics. We don't measure how many leads were passed. As a matter of fact, I tell people to almost always decline a lead. If you won't put me into a three-way thread, I don't care if it's text, Facebook, LinkedIn, email. If you won't put me in a thread and endorse me, then I don't want it. Not because I'm, snooty. Have your people call my people, Bill. It's because I want the credibility that comes from being endorsed.
Yeah.
Right? A lead on a piece of paper literally means nothing.
Right.
Right? If I went to somebody and said, Bill said I should call on you, they don't even know if that's true. But if we've been in a thread where you've said to Susie
I
or
introduce
Pete,
you, yeah.
right, hey, Susie, you should be talking to Daniel. He's got a good thing. That changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
So we bring a small group of people together on a monthly basis. We don't believe in weekly because, again, the ratios. Everybody in that room can't serve you. The 80-20 rule says a small percentage of people are positioned to give you most of your leads. So why would you hang out with the same people week after week when you can hang out with a few people monthly and spend time with the few of the few on a ongoing basis, right? Mm-hmm. Meaning spend the same amount of time, but don't spend it in a group, spend it one-on-one with your key players. So we help people identify the key players in the room and pursue those people.
Gotcha. Well, what I know about you is that anytime I have come to a networking event where you're there and I don't know anybody, our normal thing is you introduce me to people, and then I will get emails. Inevitably, I'll get emails after the event going, hey, you met so-and-so at this event, and I'd love for you two to get together and have coffee. I love that approach to connecting people. And tell me what do most people get wrong about networking and about networking events?
Okay, that's a really good question. I love answering that one. There's fundamentally three questions that you could ask when you're at a networking event. Whether it's a closed group, that means it's paid, it has dues, or if it's an open group, it's free for all. If it's a lunch, if it's a happy hour, if it's a breakfast thing, whatever. There's three questions people could be asking. And my experience is that people tend to ask what one of my mentors, Earl Flormata, calls the $5 question. That is, will you buy my thing? They are literally speed prospecting. Networking is not even the right word for what they're doing. They're simply approaching a lot of people one after the other and trying to sell their thing. And I saw a really good example of that at a local event here going on a year ago now. The 60 people in the room, I counted, the hostess went around with the microphone and she said, before she started, she said, I'm going to go around, I'm going to have you introduce yourself. I want us to tell you what you need in your business. Don't say prospect. We know you're here for prospects. Do you need a hire? Do you need a better vendor? She's trying to create some demand from the other side, right? Mm-hmm. And of the 60 people that she held the microphone in front of, 57, I counted, said, a prospect? And she said to 57 people, no. I said, don't say prospect. And 54 said, a referral to a prospect? And we chuckle. Please understand, these are successful business owners and salespeople. They're not dumb. But look at the ratio. If 57 people are there and the only thing they can think about is a prospect, mm-hmm. If everybody's there to sell, that means nobody's there to buy.
Yeah.
Well, if nobody's there to buy, how successful are the people that are there to sell are going to be, right?
Right.
So what they get wrong is they're asking a low value question. I don't want to call it the wrong question because clearly somebody's got to sign a check, right?
Yeah.
Meeting people is not the game.
Right.
Getting a check signed at some point. But the $5 question is, will you buy my thing? The $50 question is, who do you know that would buy my thing?
Right.
Because statistically, I know I'm more likely to know somebody that needs you than to need you myself because I know more than one person.
Right.
Right? Whatever your percentage of the population represents your client, I'm more likely to know some than to be one. But the $500 question is, who do you know that would know a lot of people that would buy my thing? If you're a bookkeeper, I'm not here trying to meet business owners. I'm trying to find out who's your CPA, because that CPA can send me business forever.
Yeah.
And if I'm a payroll company, I'm trying to meet the bookkeepers in the room. And if I'm an employee benefits company, I'm trying to meet the payroll people in the room. Because once you build a relationship on the other side of that, you're set for life.
Well, what I found out, one of the things that Jonathan Gamboa and I talked about a little bit was that the majority of rooms I end up in Columbia, I know a lot of people, right? Is it better for you to go to an event where you know a lot of people, or is it better for you to go to an event where you don't know anybody and are meeting new people? What's the better play?
Wow, that's a rough dichotomy. I would think that your biggest value is to be in a room where you know the fewest. There's value in knowing a couple because of the wingman effect, like we discussed a minute ago. If you're bold, like I am, it's how I met Della Watkins that runs the art museum.
Right.
I was in a room of 150 people where I didn't know anybody. I'm like, I have to fix this, and I just walked up and started talking to her. It's also how I met a professional mermaid, by the way.
I see.
Which is a fun story to tell.
Yeah.
But I think the key would be, and it kind of goes back to this general wingman notion, or the fact that other people find you endorsable, referable, whatever that is. Once you've become referable in a certain room, you don't need to stay there. Meaning if there's new people that appear in that room, people will mention your name even if you're not there.
Right.
Right. If you've become referable to key people in that room. Every now and then I'll meet somebody, we'll build a decent bond, and they'll say, you should come to the networking events I go to. And I'm thinking of one guy named David in particular, so I'll tell it with his name. And I said, David, I think probably not. Why would I? Well, there's good people there, and and you'd fit in. And I said, you're kind of missing the point, David. I said, if I'm referable in your mind, and if I'm not, that's okay. We can either pursue it, and build more relationship, or let it go. I don't really care. Either way is fine. But I said, if I'm referable in your mind, I don't need to be in that room. When somebody needs me, you'll say that.
Oh yeah.
I need to be in a room that you're not in, so that if the need you feel comes up, I can send business to you. If we're in the same room, we've duplicated our efforts. We need to be in different rooms because now I'm your twin. I'm your wingman.
Right.
I'm not just listening for me. I'm listening on behalf of Bill Grant. I'm not just you're not just listening for Ryan. You're listening for Daniel Andrews. There's more value once you've become referable to at least a few people in the room to being somewhere else. Being in any room is absolutely meaningless if you don't have a plan for what happens next. And that's the other mistake people make. They go, they leave, they think that whatever is supposed to happen did happen. They either made a sale or they didn't. Yeah. Some people might even do follow-up. And I put that in air quotes for those of you that are catching the audio, because I don't ever remember sending or receiving an email. I could be mistaken, but I don't remember ever sending or receiving an email that had the word follow-up in the subject line that brought me value. I use the word next steps, next actions. But they'll send a follow-up email. Good to meet you, Brian. If you ever need anybody in my industry, let me know, and I'll be sure to send people your way. I'm like, man, you might as well have not even done that.
Man, the thing I hate is for all your needs, for all your insurance needs, or for all your car wash needs, or for all your house painting needs. It's it's just the most rote language. And I would say my opinion on the follow-up thing, or the checking in,
next actions,
all of that stuff, is that most people's problem is not the wording; it's that they don't do it at all. Right.
That would absolutely be correct. Right. But if follow-up simply means pitching you again via email.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Meaning.
Let me sell you something.
Right. And that goes back to having an action plan.
Right.
I.e. the bookkeeper's got nothing to sell the CPA.
Right.
And they should still be having lunch with the CPA. because the CPA will refer so many bookkeeping clients to them, over time. So there's no real plan. You're particular about who you meet with.
Yeah.
You have good questions to ask when you meet with them, and the list of mistakes. And by the way, I want to be upfront for whoever's seeing this, wherever they're seeing or listening to this. These are all mistakes that I made. These are not philosophies or opinions that I've evolved. This was me kicking and screaming and going, but it's supposed to work the other way, and realizing, looking at the data, but it didn't work that way. So it's got to be another way if it's going to work. These are things that I came by hard-earned. So if I say something, you're like, well, that doesn't sound right. I know it doesn't sound right. It turns out I have data that says I'm right. That's it.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound right, but it is right. And the phrase that a lot of people use, and you've heard it, you've said it probably, people do business with folks they know, like, and trust. And I love to have fun with this question because nobody ever gets it right. What's the most important word in that sentence?
I would say trust. But...
Yeah, the most important word in that sentence is business. Otherwise, you're just making friends. Now, you were set up to get it wrong. Everybody does.
Because you gave me three choices and then choose the other one.
Because trust is the most important of the three. It is the last word in the sentence. And we just spent the last 20 minutes discussing trust. So you were going to get it wrong.
Yeah.
But the most important word in that sentence is business. And the number of people that say, I'm good at networking. And I love to be very confrontational because it gets people's attention. Not me, I'm confrontational. I say, I bet you're not. And they're like, that's kind of a bold thing to say. I consider myself a good networker. I said, well, let me get 2 data points from you, and then we'll both know. Because the data is the data. And people go, yeah, I agree with that. Data's data. And my first question is, of all the adults you know, we'll assume children aren't part of the buying decision, of all the adults you know, what percentage could refer business to you? Now, if you're a real estate agent, you're going to say, I don't know, 80, 90, 100%, right? If you're business to business like you are, Bill, you may say 50% of the people I know they're business people. Yeah. If you're a professional mermaid, you're going to say 10%, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, you can't gloss over professional mermaid. We got to talk about that.
We will get back to professional mermaid in a moment. Okay. And because there's actually several good stories behind that one client. But I don't really care if you say high, medium, or low. The first answer is not the answer. So they'll say 10%, 50%, 80%, whatever. And I say, great. Now, of that, what percentage are consistently referring you business? And without exception, they'll be like, nobody. I get occasional referrals and that's it. I said, oh, so you're good at making friends, which is a great skill if you need more friends. But if your friend group is full and you want business, you need to be asking a different set of questions. So in that first meeting at the networking event and the next actions meeting over lunch or coffee or Zoom or whatever it is, you've got to have a better set of questions. Talking about the game, talking about the weather, talking about the kids, there's nothing wrong with that, but none of that moves the business conversation forward.
Well, I call that third topic. So my daughter and I talk about how does she, how do you make friends at school, right? So if I'm talking about you, it's awkward. And if I'm talking about myself, it's awkward. If we can find a third topic, if we can say, the teacher, did you hear what she said? Right? It disarms both of us, right? I take it a little too far sometimes, but when I'm at networking things, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I'll walk up to a group and I just want to say something that has nothing to do with me and has nothing to do with them, right? It has to do with the place. It has to do with the temperature. It has to do with whatever it is.
Sure.
Just to warm up the conversation, just to not be that guy.
Correct.
Who are you and what do you do is a hard way to introduce yourself.
And that will lead me into the mermaid story. And those are good icebreakers or conversation starters.
Yeah.
But if all you ever talk about is things that are external to the two of you, meaning it comes down to this. And I want to address up front, this is a yes or no question. And you'll see why I emphasize that. Have you ever had anybody at your house for dinner, Bill?
Yes.
That you wouldn't do business with or refer?
Yes.
Okay, right. One guy looked at me for the longest time, Brian. He finally goes, are we making a list? I'm like, no. This is a yes or no question. Yeah. I don't need to know who the trash vendors in your town are, right? Okay. So questions about whether or not we ought to be barbecuing together or going out on the boat together or watching the game together are irrelevant in the context of if the objective was to find out, can I refer business to you? Can you refer business to me?
Right.
But that's a good story, good point about the icebreaker, because that's exactly what I did. I was newly back in town, so this would have been 2017, and I'm at an event at the art museum, if I recall correctly, it's art museum, and I had met plenty of people and was moving on to the next thing that I was going to do that evening, probably go home and relax. And I'm heading out the door and I look over my shoulder and I see a young couple, clearly a couple, standing next to the wall, with a drink. They each had a drink in their hand, glass of wine, and they weren't talking to anybody. And I'm like, okay, I need to fix this, right? I need to help these people out. I was done eating and drinking, but they had a drink in their hand. So what I do, I went by the bar and got another drink in my hand, right? Low-key rapport building. And I went up and I stood beside them and looked out into the crowd and I said, these things can be kind of tough, can't they? Right? Yeah. I'm acknowledging that if you're not comfortable wading into the thick of it, that's not a big surprise, right? And they're like, yeah, I don't really know who to talk to. I said, well, I happen to know a few people here. If you tell me who you want to meet, maybe I can, identify some of those people and introduce you and help the conversation get started. And she said, well, I don't really know who I want to meet. And I said, well, what is it that you do? She said, I'm a professional mermaid. And I'm like, I'm going to be here a while. Whatever was happening next was not going to happen next in the world. I'm like, I got to hear this story. And her name was Anna Clapper. She's Anna Capp. She's divorced now. And it was her husband that was with her. And when I said, I got to hear the story, he goes, oh, you're going to like it. He was totally fine, comfortable with me focusing on her and hearing her tell the story. But she was literally a professional mermaid. And, of course, the entertainment industry fell apart at COVID, which is a story that's particular to her. She now lives on a houseboat in the Keys and teaches free dive and scuba dive now down there.
So she's a swimming mermaid. So she was a mermaid in the pool.
She was whatever you needed her to be. She could pass the Red Cross lifeguard exam, the Red Cross life-saving exam with her swim fin.
Wow.
Her mermaid tail on. So if you hired her to come to your 12-year-old's birthday party, you didn't need to hire her and a lifeguard.
I see.
But she had her own tank. The best of party that's coming up, the year they did the pirate theme, that was her 20 feet inside the front door. Oh. That was her in the tank, doing the swimming and stuff. She led the whole mermaid pod at the Renaissance Festival that's north of Charlotte every year for years.
See, there's all kinds of ways to make a living.
There's all kinds of ways to make a living.
Why are we struggling so hard?
Well, and people say to me, that's a metaphor, right? I'm like, no, I still have some of her business cards to prove this woman was real and legit and alive. And for those of you that are super curious, the Deep Blue Mermaid on Facebook and Instagram, you can find her still there today. The Deep Blue Mermaid, just go look her up. But she's absolutely fascinating.
That's a lot of upper body strength too.
It is. She was featured in the documentary they did on the mermaid industry. I think Netflix. It's
probably more core work actually.
Yeah, right. Like in here,
because her legs are together. So it's a lot of like.
Oh yeah, a lot of that abs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Well, and Greg Hilton is a reference when she presented at 1 Million Cups. That was back when Greg was an active supporter, coordinator. He came up to me after she presented. He said, that's the tightest business presentation I've ever seen in my life. This woman's not just an artist. Plenty of artists don't make good business people, hence the starving artist, stereotype. This woman had a 20-year business plan, and I'm like, I know, she's got a plan. And then COVID just totally wrecked that.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, I love the idea of it. I'm actually working with a guy right now. I'm trying to figure out if we're going to play music together, but like he plays music full time. So this is what he does. He plays 5 or 6 days a week and, plays at Soda City on Saturday afternoon and then plays at a bar Saturday night. And, this is his living, which I think is great. Like if you can, it gets hard to keep it up, to be an artist that makes a business around your art, It
really is.
And I guess you would consider a mermaid an artist? I don't know. I would, I guess.
An aquatic dancer.
Yeah, an entertainer, but it definitely falls on the side of art. Now, clearly teaching scuba and freedive, that's technical.
No,
that's technical as all get out.
But then there's some costuming involved and things like that.
Correct.
Yeah. So I think Brian and I have run across you at the Growth Summit and a couple of those events, What are good things for people to go to in Columbia? Like if they're looking to really meet people and really make a connection, what are good things to go to?
Excellent question there, and I will definitely lean into that. I would say that there needs to be some awareness that even a low value event can be higher value if you have a plan. The number of times people go, I just need to be in the right room, meet the right people. I said, no, you need the right plan. You primarily need the right plan. Having said that, some rooms tend to have more value than others, but all of them will be low value if you have no plan for what to do there and what happens next. And it doesn't have to be complicated, but if your whole thing is to meet a lot of people, I call that marketing by hand. You might as well have gone to the parking lot, stuck a flyer on every windshield wiper and gone home for what most people accomplish at these events.
So that's what the introvert should do, right?
This is the fun part, Brian. Introverts have an edge. Now, in a large group, it can be a thing, but as far as long-term relationship building, introverts have an edge. I hate to say this because all the extroverts just got off the bandwagon right here. And I'm like, no, don't worry, I can coach you too. But a few deeper relationships with a few key people is exactly what introverts want. That's exactly what works. I have to talk extroverts, including myself, out of going to everything at every minute, at every time, and meeting with everybody that wants to meet with me. I can't effectively do that and support my family and be with my family the way I want to. Locally, some things I find a lot of value in. I have had an absolute blast with the Irmo Chamber. They're very open. They're very welcoming. I was concerned that they'd be a good old boys network, when I came back here, but they were super open right from the jump. Some of the chambers that remain nameless are good old boy networks, and we just leave those out. I'm at the Irmo Chamber. Some of the chambers don't focus on small biz. Well, one chamber doesn't. I'll leave it to y'all to figure out which one that is. But the Irmo Chamber is good. Jonathan Gamboa, David Ruiz have put a lot of energy into professionals on the patio.
And they do 3 events now, right? They get the ballpark thing. And
in the summer, breakfast. They do professionals at the ballpark. They're doing a breakfast event. They're doing the evening event. Professionals on the patio is really solid. Good attendance there. Again, doesn't matter if there's 100 people there. You got to have a plan. I'm a supporter of David Tanner and what he calls Midlands Directory. They have a lunch meeting every other month. They have a lunch meeting, and every month they have a coffee meeting out of the gate. That one's real strong. But David Tanner, just like it sounds, you can look him up or find him on Facebook or find me and I'll introduce you to him. I run a complete newsletter of all the events because for a large number of people, it's what side of town and what time of day is it. And that's how it's organized. The newsletter comes out date and time. That's the primary indicator of whether or not somebody's going to make it. But if anybody cares, track me down and I'll get you linked up on the newsletter. But there's 25 to 40 in-person, free business networking events in the city every 30 days, 25 to 40.
Yeah.
And we produce a newsletter on that.
Well, and I just met Courtney and Greg Boomer, who are on our podcast too, and they do a group called Best of the Midlands that meets in Lexington. It's the only one I know that meets in Lexington, and they their regular event is on Friday afternoon, which is perfect, right? I get to just knock off work and go to a networking event.
Okay, is that the same one that Edwin Gerace from Giraffe Marketing is? Okay, good deal. Because I was going to say there's another one on Friday afternoons in Lexington.
I ran into Edwin at
you completed the sentence
event,
to me.
so I'm assuming that's probably what it is.
That would be it.
I found that group to be really interesting, and there's a lot of people I didn't know, other than Colt from that was at Expansive and is now at Junk King. He was there.
But
yeah, I mean, I think it's so interesting. As you think about networking as business building, I try to network a lot, and I will tell you that I don't know that I've formed any great long-lasting business relationships from networking. I have met a lot of people, and I've made a lot of relations, and referrals probably end up boiling out of that somewhere, but so much of our business comes from previous clients and, relations of previous clients and people that leave this thing and go to this thing. And so we move with them, and that kind of stuff. And
that's rock solid. And I do want to make, a distinction. The word networking as a verb, as it's currently practiced, is a subset of most people's marketing plan.
Right.
Okay. And the network building that I'm talking about is the literal opposite of a marketing plan. The only thing they two share in common, whatever your marketing is and whatever your quote networking is, and building a network as strategic business development, is the only thing they share in common is the goal is biz dev, is the goal is revenue. That's the only thing they share in common. Because marketing is about reaching as many people as possible and hoping the right stuff trickles back to you. Building a network is about only ever being introduced to the right people to start with.
Yeah.
And it's not that hard to do. And
I will say too, I very definitely don't have a strategy.
Right. Well,
I go, well, I have Wednesday morning open this week. Let's go to 1 million
Let's
cups,
go.
right?
But I think you were talking about the strategy when you get in the room, right? So what would
Part
be
of
those
it's
like 3
strategies
tips
in the room.
to that strategy
Sure.
when you're in the room?
Okay. And then what do you do after that? Because trust cannot be built in a group setting. No degree of credibility can be built in a group setting. The only thing you build in a group setting is familiarity. Oh, he's, Bill, he shows up every week. Right?
Yeah.
That's all you can do is familiarity. Number one, don't go into a pitch with everybody that you meet. That's one thing that you should not do, because they don't want to hear it. Right? The gal from the aesthetic spa, right, is telling me what a great experience is. And I'm like, I didn't think I'd have hair growing out of my ears till I'm in my 80s. Are you telling me I'm a prospect? If I'm not a prospect, I don't need to know the particulars of how your business works. Right? The degree to which you come in and audit a business before you offer to help them is meaningless to me if I'm not a prospect. Right? So don't treat everybody like a prospect is the first. 2, focus on who you want to meet. Figure out who that key referral partner can be and ask, do you know somebody in the room, or can you introduce me to somebody that meets that criteria that's not in the room, right? And then, so that's part of it. Asking people about their professional journey, right? How did you get here, right? Well, I invested in a business selling, car parts because somebody told me that's a good business to be in. I want somebody that's passionate about cars, right? In my world, right?
Yeah.
So ask them about how they got to where they go. There's a number of things, but primarily stop treating it like a chance to tell as many people as possible, what it's like to work with you, because that's a dead end. It's a literal dead end. It's not going to take you where you want to go. Would be a huge part of that.
And they're so worried about themselves, they're not really listening to you anyway.
Correct.
Well, and that's the old adage, like givers get.
Well, and yes,
If you're focused on the connection, like you're talking about, is, hey, I want to put this person and this person together. The more you put out there, the more comes back.
That is a true statement. Now, what's interesting is Adam Grant writes in one of his books, Give and Take is the one I'm referring to. I think he's got 4 out. He makes a point that I was trying to make, but I didn't have the data and didn't have the words. And my friend and mentor, Suzanne Taylor King, said, Daniel, read at least the first chapter, because he says it better than you can, and he has the data to back it up. And here's the data. That if you look at people's networking styles or ask their peers, they will very quickly be identified as givers, takers, or matchers. Mm-hmm. That's their general philosophy of life: givers, takers, or matchers. And I don't need to go any more detail. Y'all both nodded, so you feel like you've got an understanding of what I needed to say so far. Then you can look at 20, 30, 40 years, a career's worth of success, and look at high performers and low performers, and where do these people fall. At the highest levels of success, it won't surprise you to learn that you find more givers than takers and matchers. At the lowest levels of success, you find
takers,
more givers than takers and matchers.
Huh.
Takers and matchers clump in the middle. Givers come out high because they're giving strategically, they're giving right, they're finding the key referral partners that they can give to that can give back. Mm-hmm. People that are givers at the lowest levels of success are giving all they can to everybody, every minute, all the time.
Giving too much.
Do you tithe at church, synagogue, and mosque? You better believe it, right? Do you show up at the homeless shelter on Thanksgiving to serve dinner? You better believe it. Do you donate your nice, gently used professional attire to people that are interviewing down there at Transitions or Oliver? You better believe it. Do you mentor people that are new in business because they don't know what they're doing? Yes, you better believe it. But you can't spend all of your time doing that, because you'll never reach the people you want to serve. Mm-hmm. And it's not just a revenue question. If you believe that what you do gets results for people, to choose to be in low-value conversations is to choose to not be in high-value conversations. You do not have an unlimited amount of time. At some point, you got to lock the door, go home, and hang out with the fam. I say you want to lock the door, go home, hang out with the fam, right? So every low-value conversation you went into, knowing that it was likely to be low value, you've opted not to be in a high-value conversation. And you can't sustain your business, and you can't serve the people you want to serve when you're choosing low-value conversations. So yes, the spirit should be giving.
What would be a low value conversation? And what would be a high value conversation?
Sure. To put it in really pedestrian terms, if you're a real estate agent in this city, sitting down with me and trying to become referable in my mind as a real estate agent is a low value conversation. Number one, I know about 100 real estate agents well. I know probably 1,500 by name. Number two, almost everybody in my circle knows a real estate agent that they trust. Nobody's coming to me and asking for referrals, right? Number three, as a prospect, I've got one more transaction in this town left. I'm going to sell the house I'm in at some point, move to some other town, and we're done here. So it's a low value conversation. But if you're a real estate agent and you choose to talk to a nursing home director, a funeral home director, a mortgage lender, a moving company, a divorce attorney, those are all people that will have one lead a week for you. Why would you choose a conversation where the potential payoff at most is very, very, very weak versus a conversation where the potential payoff at the least is very, very, very strong?
Well, and I think who you're talking to too is you're talking to people who are already doing a lot of this on a regular basis, right? And you're saying you're doing this on a regular basis. Let's get better at it, right?
Right. Let's be particular about who we build with.
Where I think that the majority of business people aren't doing it at all, right? And I was going to make a post on LinkedIn about this today.
Sure.
It's like most people aren't storytelling badly. They're just not doing it at all.
Right.
Right.
Correct.
And I think when you get into these ideas of low value and high value conversations, if you're going from not doing it at all to doing it, then everything that you do is a step in the right direction, and you'll figure out how to do it better.
Well,
as you fail or as you succeed.
Sure. As Steve Brown says, and Zig Ziglar quoted him, anything worth doing is worth doing badly on your way to doing it well. That is certainly a true statement.
Sure.
But I do think that, given that we're going to spend this much time on the planet alive, this much time awake, this much time at work, these are approximations, and this much time dealing with other people.
Except if your work is dealing with other people.
That's right.
And then it widens.
Well, whatever. But, right, you can't choose, you shouldn't ever choose to go into a conversation where there's a low percentage chance of any value and the value that exists would be low.
Yeah.
You should always go into a conversation where there's a high percentage chance of payoff and the payoff would be high. Now, whether you want low percentage payoff for low percentage chance of a high payoff or a high percentage chance of low payoff, that's really up to you. But you don't leave the house if you're going to insist on engaging in conversations where there's a low percentage chance there will be any value and the value that exists at best would be low. Skip that.
I will tell you that, like, my first full-time year in business, this was 2008. I joined BNI. Okay. Because I got invited to BNI by a friend. Right. I was a wedding videographer at the time. Realistically, had no business being part of a BNI group, other than everybody knows somebody getting married, I guess, and that could have done it. But,
sooner or later.
But the BNI group was full of, there was an investment person, there was a mortgage person, home inspector, roofing, realtor, on and on and on. They all got a lot of business from each other. Mm-hmm. And of course, the report from them about the BNI group was, this BNI group is the core to my business succeeding. Mm-hmm. I said, well, sign me up, and I think we spent way more money than we had at the time, $900 or something at the time, to be part of the BNI for a year. And I got very little out of being part of that BNI group, other than I met with these people every single week, right? And so I learned, as somebody who realistically, business-wise, did not really know what I was doing, right? I knew how to make videos, pretty much, but I quit my job to do this full-time, and I was just meeting with these people once a week. Mm-hmm. And I learned so much about myself through that time. Mm-hmm. Now, the expense of it and the amount of time I spent doing it was probably way out of proportion, right?
Yeah.
For what I learned. But I do look back on it and say, I'm glad I did that now, looking back on it. Sure. I'm glad I did that because I learned how I work in those kind of situations. And I learned how to determine if, when I walk into a room, is this a room of people that I'm going to be able to get to know well and to do any business with.
And that's a great skill. I would say that you don't, because particularly in this town, there's enough, again, 25 to 40 free open
Oh,
professional networking. When I say free, if it's the Irmo Chamber and it's $10 for lunch, it still goes on my newsletter because, come on, you're going to eat lunch anyway.
Right.
Right. But, not dues based, not
Yeah.
closed,
Yeah.
right? Not you have to pay a fee to be part of it. There's so many of them in this town that you can go for free and repeat the practice and learn the same skill, about yourself, about how to present yourself, refine your elevator pitch and all that fun stuff. Certainly, I would say, don't invest the money when you can do the same thing for free, if that's your output.
Right.
But when you're in one of those groups, right, and this goes back to my talk about the 80-20, right? Why sit in a room of 40 or 50 or 80 or 100, which is actually a ridiculous concept. If you study it sociologically, you realize that 22 is the ideal number, by the way, for a room that size, or a room that type, when only a small percentage of people are going to refer a business,
Yeah.
right? Why not just figure out how to hang out with those few people? Right. And it's my general sense, and this is not picking on any particular brand name because there's plenty of them that have the same philosophy. If you have to be on the roster to get the referrals, you never had a relationship with any of those people to start with.
Yeah, it's like joining a fraternity to get friends.
Right.
They're not exactly your friends.
Right. Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
If the only people that come to your house for dinner go to your same church and live in your same neighborhood, those aren't friends. Those are people on a roster. Right. But relationships don't require rosters. Relationships always supersede rosters. And if you're in an environment where it's discouraged to do business with somebody outside the roster, then that's not a relationship. It's just a continual repeating transaction, which you can mistake for a relationship if you don't know the difference.
Interesting. I will say I have only seen you outside of a traditional suit once or twice.
Last time I saw him, he wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing shorts
Yeah.
Where were we?
at the museum.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Correct. Yes, it was a casual thing.
It has not been often
It's
that I've
not
seen
been
you
often.
outside of suits. Talk about why. Talk about what, because
Is that part of your personal brand?
Because look, to me, especially since 2020, but like even before 2020, a suit is hard. There's a
Okay.
lot. You got ironing, you got dry cleaning, you got to do. There's all that. Talk about where that comes from.
Sure. I think it's evolved into a little bit of my personal brand, but I put very little weight, as you guys know. We've had several conversations, around, brand. Reputation, way more important to me than brand. Referability, way more important to me than brand. And I have pondered and even experimented with doing more casual shirts during the workday, but it just doesn't feel right. So it's primarily about me and my mindset. I do find that there's some coolness in the consistency, much like I use metal business cards and they go together. And when I get quizzed about it, I go, well, I charge money up front and the results come later. So I have to make sure I look like I'm not about to run away with your money, right? And I make a joke about it. But for me, I'm very fortunate. I haven't gained a lot of weight in the last 10, 15 years. I spent a number of years where a suit would have been incorrect to wear. And when I got back to an environment where I could pick what I chose to wear, and I opted for suits because I still had quite a number of very nice clothes still in my closet that I had not worn out because I've been fortunate not to change my weight. At least that was true 9 years ago. It's been a little bit rough the last couple
And it
of
makes
years.
it easier, I guess, to mix and match a little bit, so it's not so variable. That you could
Right.
wear.
I have to do less thinking. I'm
Yeah.
picking from 3 color shirts, purple, blue, and white. I'm picking from, I have 40 ties. I pick from the same 6 over and over, right? Couple of suits, couple of suit jackets, right? I didn't even pick today. My wife picked today. I said, honey, I'm about to be on TV. What should I wear? She said, that one I really like. I said, all right. I knew exactly which
Yeah.
one it was. So I like it for that reason. And then partly it's because of my own mindset. When I'm dressed this way, I stay at my desk. I do the things I need to do. It's helpful for my family. My wife, of course, lives with me, and my mother-in-law does too. When I'm not in my suit, everybody knows Dan can be asked questions. I can engage. I can help. I can support. I can do this thing. I can, run that errand. I can
So
help.
suit
make
is
dinner.
work mode.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
in my mind and their
It's like
mind.
his bat suit.
Yeah.
Suit is work mode.
You know what my first experience with this, my dad was a forester, so he was in khakis and a white t-shirt almost every day and boots, right? Never wore a suit except for
So-
on very special occasions.
I was about to say,
Funerals.
wedding or funeral.
Yeah. To church every once in a while, but my experience with suits was Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers comes home from work. He takes his suit coat off. He changes his shoes into slippers.
Puts
and
on a
puts
sweater.
on the cardigan, right?
Yeah.
And so keeps the tie because, obviously, what are we,
Right.
barbarians?
Exactly.
He's got to wear a tie around the house. But that's my first experience with it, and I always thought
that's what a grown-up looks like. It's got a suit on, right? And and when I got my very first wedding gig, this would have been like 2004 or 5.
They wanted you to wear.
No, they never. No one at a wedding ever said anything about what we wore. Right?
Oh, interesting.
We could have worn shorts and flip flops because nobody looked at us. It was like we were the help.
You're supposed to be invisible. Yeah.
But I went to the Tanger outlet store in Myrtle Beach and bought a suit. It was the first suit I ever bought. It was like $119.
Yeah.
And I had never spent $119 on clothes, but I had my very first suit, and I wore the same suit over and over again for my first probably 20 weddings. And then I bought a second suit, a third suit. Somewhere along the way, I worked with a real cool wedding photographer in Charleston at a Charleston wedding. And he's like, look, man, he said, I don't know if you recognize this, but you look like the guests, and nobody knows what you're doing here. And he said, you need to do something to differentiate yourself from the guest.
And that's a valid point.
And so I was like, cool. So then I started wearing black on black, I got, but, and then somebody
Steve
said,
Jobs.
now you look like a waiter. I kept going, like, someone please help me, Like,
what is the photographer's uniform?
Yeah, so black on black is it. I mean, that's the general uniform. But
right.
But and then I just
they're all Andy Warhol-ish, right?
After a couple of years, I just got
artsy.
Comfortable wearing whatever, as long as I looked nice, as long as I was comfortable, and wearing a good pair of shoes that you can stay in for 12 hours
That's
and all
critical.
that stuff. Dress shoes are not usually that. But I've always recognized that like I love the idea of having a visual identity, just to say, if I'm seeing Daniel Andrews, I'm seeing him in a suit, right? I find it interesting that you talk about reputation as not brand, where the way we think of brand is we think of it as almost like reputation. Like if you think about what people would talk about you, the way they would talk about you if you're not in the room.
Well,
is
and
brand, and
it's always a question of how do you choose to define your terms, right?
Sure.
Meaning you can use any number of words, and a lot of them bleed into each other,
Sure.
right? There are elements. What's the word I'm looking for?
Synonymous.
Subtleties,
in a way.
right?
Yeah.
Subtleties of one, facets of one that bleed into the other. And I would say that to make my distinction and to acknowledge that you mean this almost the same thing by those use of the words appropriately is I would say brand is what you put forward or what you're trying to convince people you stand for, whereas what people say about you is what you actually stand for.
So I understand what you're saying, but the reality is your brand is what people think about you, because you can try to do and project all this other stuff.
Yeah.
But if they think of you a certain way, sorry, that's your brand.
Okay, right. I'm willing to use those two words to mean the same thing if you're willing to acknowledge that brand and reputation then are, so to speak, inbound.
Yes.
They're what other people say about you. It's it's not just what you said about you, it's what you've done and how people view you. So yes, your reputation then becomes your brand. But when I think personal brand, I always think somebody sitting there saying, what do I want people to say about me? And then pushing that forward. And so that's where I wanted to make a distinction. But yes, in the sense that you used it, that yes, as long as you acknowledge that it's not what you tell people about you that sticks, it's what their true experience of you
now,
is.
brand strategists, right? They then say, what do you want people to think about you?
Right.
And then
what choices should you make?
Yes, and let's devise a strategy to project what you want people to say. And if you do it right, then people will
there can be a high degree
have that reputation of saying, okay, that's who that person is,
right.
And that happens to be what I'm projecting, so your brand matches what people think.
Correct. Now, having said that, the counter, not the counterpoint, but an illumination of why I chose the words I did. We'll use that. There are certain people on LinkedIn that use the title self-appointed. Every title on LinkedIn is one you typed in yourself. They use the word master connector. And every single one of those people with the self-appointed title master connector has been one of the crappiest introducers I've ever met in my life. They believe that quantity is the key, and it never is.
Yeah.
It's not the many, it's the few. And they don't even know how to introduce you. They don't even know how to introduce you. Not only are they trying to introduce you to 1,000 people, only 3 of which are relevant, they don't even know how to introduce you. And I'm like, this is not That is not master connector. That's macro connector. That's you're working on numbers, right? You're not working on quality.
I find it fascinating too that anytime you get a, let's say, reputation or brand that's inbound instead of outbound, so many people resist that branding that comes on them from other people, right? And we had this with videographer for a long time. I always hated when people called me a videographer, right? And you're like, what else are you? I don't even understand. But we look at videographer as being limiting to what we're capable of,
sure,
and all of that kind of stuff, right? What I had to do at some point was to say, this is what people are searching for when they find me. So I just need to let it go. Just give into it, right? I found this with music for a long time. Like, so many musicians don't want to be pigeonholed into the genre that they're obviously in, right? Or you're a punk band or a metal band or a country band. And you're like, no, we're a hyphenate, multi-hyphenate, whatever version of a thing that we've invented. And nobody's searching for that, right? They want to find you as a thing. And so, but as I switched from doing wedding videography to doing other things with businesses, I found that branding, that either was intentional or not intentional on my part, because I did weddings, stuck for a very long time, right? And no matter how hard no matter how hard I clawed at it, it stuck, right? We haven't done weddings in 2 years, right?
Yeah, I remember the last wedding lead I gave you. You're like, yeah, no.
Can't do it anymore. I just don't have the people, and
which is fine. But but yes, it's
none of our current staff has ever done a wedding, right? So I mean, that's unfortunately what happens. But I think it is interesting that kind of the so many of our intentions on branding are just not right. They're not the right direction.
Okay,
right?
and then that's going to support my position based on data that a few key people are more important than what lots of people think about you. Because in this case, lots of people either have a wrong or shallow idea of what you're capable of.
Right.
But a few people that know Bill Grant as storyteller that happens to use the video format, right, can make all the difference. And and what's cool about that is if you shift from one medium to another or one focus or one vertical to another, you only have to update a handful of people.
Right. Because storyteller is really the
correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But because you and I weren't in relationship, we don't dislike each other, but because we weren't tightly connected, when you let the wedding business go, I didn't know that.
Right. And we didn't announce it. We didn't make a big
correct. And I'm not saying you made a mistake doing that. I'm just saying if you've got those few tight people. And I think I asked this question from a lot of people. Where do most of your leads come from? Lots of people say, previous customers. A fair number of them go, previous customers. Obviously, where else could they come from? And I'm like, oh, you don't even know, right?
Yeah.
And I will say, and again, if your business is where you want it, that's great. I always tell people you can handle more clients because you're just going to raise your rates, right? That's all you're going to do, right? If you don't need more, you need more coming in the door so you can justify raising your rates. But if very few people have customers that are uniquely situated to be ongoing referral partners. Again, let's use a real estate. Most of the people they sell a house to aren't positioned to have one lead a week, the way a moving company, a divorce attorney, a funeral home director, a nursing home director are going to have one lead a week for them. And you can become credible in the minds of people that aren't your customers. Just do good work. I mean, do you think a real estate agent that's testing out a new mortgage lender or might want to that she or he is going to refinance her house just to let Nick Clyburn prove how good he is at the job? No, she's going to send him a small deal that she's not too worried about and let him prove himself. Then she's going to send him a bigger deal. Yeah. And she could have never used Nick Clyburn as her mortgage lender personally and still send 100% of her business to Nick, because he's become referable in her mind without him being a client. So if you think that's the only place they can come from, you're missing about 80% of your referrals.
Interesting. Well, one of the things we love about this podcast format for us is that we've got the space to do it in. We've got the expertise. We have practiced it long enough at this point. This is 34 episodes we've done this year, since January. We're becoming an expert at this, right? And so what we love about it is that this is what we're putting out. This is what people are seeing of us as much as anything, and hopefully we're going to get known for being able to do a podcast, so that somebody wants to announce their candidacy for governor, or they want to do something big. This is where we're going to start, and
Sure.
hopefully we'll get to that point at some level, that will be what we do. That's intentional, but it's also real true to what we want.
Right. It's another format for storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I love this story. This format is really one of the more comfortable ones that we've done, because this feels the least forced, of anything that we've done.
Sure.
It feels very natural.
well, and I that goes a long way. The things that feel natural, the things that feel authentic, will eventually draw the right people towards you, as customers, as referral partners, as venture partners, as friends. And I think a lot of people miss that in so many ways. And that was part of, again, of a conversation I was having earlier today. If you choose to live authentically, the first thing that will happen is you'll lose a lot of friends. And friends is in scare quotes, because those were people that were pretending to like who you were pretending to be. So you got to ask yourself, were they really friends?
Yeah. They're
Now,
transactional.
over time, or just not aware of who you really were, right? But over time, you will attract men, women, children, cats, and dogs, because our hearts cry out for authenticity and authentic connection, authentic relationship. And those will be your ride or die. And I'd rather have a half dozen people that believe in me, right, that'll ride or die, than 60 people that are singing my praises. That's not that relevant to me, if they don't know me, right? And that's why my self-appointed title, for those of you that want to look me up on LinkedIn, is Chief Instigator, because that's not necessarily a point of pride. If you don't want to poke in the eye with a sharp stick, don't come to me, because you're going to get a poke in the eye with a sharp stick.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for doing this, man. This has been fun, and
Thanks for the invitation.
I will say I say to a lot of people at the end of the podcast, I'll see you around. I definitely will see you around.
Yeah, see me around.
Because if
Can't avoid me.
you go anywhere in public, you're going to run into you.
I show up.
Like, oh, there's Daniel again,
There's Dan
in
again.
a suit.
In a suit.
Saturday afternoon at the baseball game.
No,
he's in a suit.
I would not be in a suit there. For the record, I was not in a suit until after lunch when I came up here today. But I was in a dress shirt, shorts, and house slippers, because on a Zoom call you can't see what's on the bottom.
That's right.
there. But,
Well, since COVID, my wife and I joke that anytime I wear a collared shirt, I feel like I'm in a monkey suit.
Yeah, exactly.
I got to get in something more comfortable, So
and I'll occasionally show up on Zoom in a short sleeve, because my office is upstairs at my house, and when it's 100 degrees in Columbia, it's 80 degrees on the inside.
Gotcha.
So.
All right, so we end up every podcast with 5 things that are your favorites, and so I will start with music. What kind of music do you like?
Whew. Probably predominant that I listen to would be classic rock, because it's easily accessible.
Sure.
I'm a big fan of blues, jazz, folk music as well.
Okay.
So the things that created rock and roll,
Yeah.
music-wise. But probably the thing I hear the most is classic rock.
Nice. What's your classic rock go-to?
Depends on the mood. Big fan of Mark Knopfler and Dire Straits.
Oh,
Big
okay.
fan of Tom Petty. Fair amount of Pink Floyd. Robbie Robertson, the band. Go back. Bob Dylan, of course. Trying to think of the concerts I've been to. George Thorogood, Elton John, Bob Seger.
Nice.
Those are all concerts I've been
Yeah,
to.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Favorite movie?
Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh.
Or The Big Chill. One or the
Okay.
other. One or the other.
Yeah, so I had a realization 3 years ago. I watched The Big Chill for the very first time. Okay, so it came out when I was a kid. I was probably 9 or 10 years old. I was not the least bit interested in seeing this movie when it came out. And then I got cool, and I'm too cool to watch it for a long time. So as like a 49-year-old, I watched it, and I'm realizing these guys are in their early 30s. And I'm going, holy moly. I felt like they were old. This was like a senior citizen movie when I was a kid, and did not realize, it's shocking.
I've got you by a few years, and I'll tell this because it's relevant to what you just said. I faked my ID not to buy liquor, to go see an R-rated movie, The
Oh, yeah.
Big Chill.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know why I was enamored with it, but I went. I liked it so much. I took all my friends, and these are 18-year-olds, right? 17, 18-year-olds. And they came out and they're like, well, that was a dumb movie. Nothing happened. And I wanted
like,
to
why?
go, what?
Yeah.
Everything happened. What do you mean nothing happened?
Oh,
But
man.
that speaks to the fact that I'm more interested in relationship than I am in action.
But the
right?
music in that movie is just incredible.
They were one of the first mixed music soundtracks. Like, not Staying Alive, what do they call it? Saturday Night Fever had a soundtrack, but it's all by the Bee Gees, right? Even Flash, from
but the
70s.
Bee Gees wrote those songs for that soundtrack.
Right.
So like Big Chill
right.
actually pulled from
and
other
correct.
songs, yeah.
Queen did for the Flash movie in the 80s, they did the whole soundtrack, but the choice to pick music from that era. And I had a friend with a VCR, friend of the girl I was dating at the time, dubbed the entire audio track onto cassette so that I could not listen just to the soundtrack, but to the entire audio track from the movie, because the way the soundtrack was integrated in the movie was so important to me. But yes, the music was already out, but the way they brought that into the picture was earth moving.
Interesting.
Sure.
Cool. Favorite dessert?
Ooh, tiramisu.
Tiramisu. That's a very common answer on this podcast. It is fascinating.
Second to banana pudding, and I just found out yesterday that Centerville, Tennessee has a National Banana Pudding Festival.
Yes.
October 5th and 6th. You can see me there. I will not be in a suit. But my wife and I have a fun story about banana pudding at our wedding reception. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Okay.
So fan of banana pudding.
Favorite season?
Spring.
Spring. Okay. Spring and fall are most. I feel like, boy,
We don't get a lot of springs, actually.
really? I feel like spring is second to fall. Fall is most everybody's favorite.
Yeah.
But I feel like Richard Dawson. I think what's interesting is we date ourselves based on our Family Feud host. So, like, who's your Family Feud host?
I don't know.
So if you think about Family Feud, who's the host?
Richard Dawson.
Richard
clearly.
Dawson, obviously,
Yeah.
right? So
Louis.
is it Louis?
Yeah.
There's been it's interesting how that works.
Steve Harvey has done such a, because I see Family Feud more because constant clips of him doing it.
Yeah.
But
But
yeah, I
Richard
guess
Dawson with the kissing all the women and all the stuff. I mean, it's just it was a different time. But anyway, anytime somebody answers something at this phase, and I go, that's our number one answer.
Number one answer. Whereas my Family Feud references, when I ask somebody who's your target market and they start with the words anybody or everybody, I jump to my feet and yell, "Survey says." I mean, I don't
That's
care
right.
what setting I'm in. It's not even my event. I'll still jump to my feet and go, "Survey
And look,
says."
survey says is that's a
Cultural
touchstone.
catchphrase, yeah,
it's
it really
it's
is.
a big one.
Survey says.
All right, last one is what's your favorite? What would be your meal on death row? If you're on death row, what's your last meal?
I like the hypothesis that I'm on death row.
Yeah.
Well, and if the politics of America keep it much longer, you might find me on death row. Wow, that is a really good question. I think it would have to be something super simple and straightforward. A steak and mashed potatoes and some other vegetable.
So one of the early answers we got to that was a tomahawk, 42-ounce tomahawk steak, and the answer is because it would take me forever to eat it.
Forever to eat, I was about to say, because you're going to be dead by the time
That's
you.
right.
Can
the
you
old
imagine?
96er.
What is that?
right.
What is that? More than 2.5 pounds worth of, meat in your colon? Yeah, you're dead anyway. Sure, why not make it a 42-ounce tomahawk?
I have just recently in my TikTok, I've started to get a lady who is a competitive eater, and her whole TikTok is watching her eat these giant amounts of food, and she's super fit, like big old muscles and the whole thing. And she will take a big old steak, or she'll take 16 cheeseburgers, or she'll take whatever it is, and the whole thing is you're just sitting there watching her eat for 3 or 4 minutes.
I'm afraid to click on even one of those because I don't need more than one of my feet. I'd like
Oh
to
my
see.
God.
I'll come watch on your phone so that they don't trip
Yeah.
on my feet after that.
Because you just go, ugh.
I can't. No, that
Yeah.
doesn't look good.
So there's a eating challenge that is out there. You eat a hot dog and drink a beer for every inning of the baseball game.
Okay, so 9 hot dogs and 9 beers,
Yes.
unless it goes into overtime.
No, if it goes, it just keeps going
Oh, okay. Wow.
for the entire game.
Yeah.
Now you can do that, like J.J. Watt did that in like inning 5, right? But they did one at Wrigley Field with a bunch of people came in to do it, and Joey Chestnut was on it,
Of course.
and he was so irritated because people were throwing up. He's like, "What is this? Like, you cannot come to a competitive eating thing and throw up. This is
that's
amateur
funny.
hour."
No, the one I heard is the beer round where you drink a beer on every hole of the golf round. So that nobody ever finishes that.
How about the beer mile?
Now
Yeah.
the beer mile is fascinating.
Well, I just judged a shrimp and grits festival a couple months ago.
I need to be on the judging committee for that.
I know.
Thank you very
I
much.
just happened to know the guy. He was on Brian Cole. He was on our podcast, and he asked me to be a judge.
Then
And
I'm going to use my network and ask you to introduce me to him.
I was one of 2 judges that showed up, and so there were like 3 judges, and so we got to eat all of the shrimp and
All
grits.
of the shrimp and grits.
I will tell you, by the 10th
It all
cup of
tastes the
shrimp and
same.
grits, I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm very sorry. I did not. I have made a terrible mistake.
Did not anticipate.
And, right.
I haven't eaten this many shrimp.
So
and
like the
grits.
first one got great ratings, and then after that it was all downhill. It
A
was
couple
like,
of podcasters that I admire. One of them was involved in a competitive chili cook-off in Northern California where he lives. And the way the votings were done, they gave you 3 basically poker chips when you came in, and then everybody had a kettle. Every competitor had and you could put all 3 in one if you cared that much, or you could put one here and one here and one there, 2 there and 1 there, whatever you wanted. Everybody had 3 chips to vote with, and then the winner, the most chips won. Well, they had girls in bikinis serving the chili, so they won. Everybody's like, you cheated. He goes, no, the winner is the person with the most chips in the kettle.
Hey, how you get there?
Right. He's like, they never said it's the best tasting chili is the winner. They said the winner is the one with the most chips.
One of the
in
most
kettle.
chips. That's right.
Well,
We were in
economics in one lesson is beware of what you incentivize.
That's
and
right.
sex sells.
Right.
Sure. And let's end it there. How about
Sure.
How about that? That's
Sure.
a good. That's a good. Well, thank you so much, Daniel.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, and I'm sure I'll see you around soon.
Good. And the reality is, sex doesn't sell. People remember the ad, but they don't remember the brand.
Well,
They've studied it.
That's true, I guess.
They remember the ad, and they have no idea which brand of beer they were advertising.
I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV.
That's
That's
exactly.
we remember that one.
We remember that one too.
Well, thank you, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, man. This was a blast.